Becoming champion, it's hard, but staying champion, it's even harder. Now Demetrious Johnson is the best fighter competing in mixed martial art today. And he's on the point of breaking the record for the most consecutive win in UFC history for the title. So be aware, and I can't wait to see what's gonna happen. Good luck.
Back to the daily grind. Thanks for checking out the channel. You know what time it is. It's full time
MMA.
George St. Pierre came out and gave high praise to Demetrious Johnson before he was scheduled to face Ray Borg and break Anderson Silva's record at UFC 215, which we found out will not be happening because Ray Borg was forced to pull out of the main event, canceling Demetrious Johnson's record-breaking title fight for tomorrow night. But still, that doesn't change the fact that George St. Pierre did have some really high praise for Demetrious Johnson. As you heard, he said Demetrious Johnson is the best fighter competing in mixed martial arts today, and that's a big praise coming from George St. Pierre, because George St. Pierre is a guy that many people have called the the greatest fighter. I just got a comment that popped up that said "you're a dumb fuck." It made me laugh. It was from fucking Justin Fisher TV. Shout out Justin Fisher TV. And it's your. There's an apostrophe in that. It's not your. Anyways, I'm not gonna get into that. But anyways, George St. Pierre, he was known as one of the greatest fighters of all time. So for him to come out and say that Demetrious Johnson is the best fighter in competing in mixed martial arts today, that is big praise. And Demetrious Johnson, man, he's been more vocal about that. He said, you know, this was actually his exact words. I was always a big fan of Anderson Silva. He was a true mixed martial artist. I remember when he set this record, I was like, oh my God, he's at 10. No one's ever going to get 10 consecutive title defenses. And here's little old me, the first ever flyweight champion. I'm the only ever fighter to hold this belt. I've submitted people. I've KO'd people. I've won 7 bonuses. I'm able to go out there and win this fight. I'll be the longest reigning UFC champion ever in history. There are a lot of champions who get the belt and are unbeatable, and the next thing you know, they get beat. Every single time you step in the octagon, you have to be on. And Demetrious Johnson said, GSP and Anderson Silva were great champions, but I'm the best to ever step foot in this octagon. So for Demetrious Johnson to have made that statement, and he low-key threw shade at Anderson Silva. He kind of threw shade. He said Anderson Silva and GSP were great champions, but I'm the best. So for Anderson Silva to come out and co-sign that, that's kind of big, you know. But you have to wonder. I wonder why GSP would do that, you know. I mean, maybe he just, you know, because whenever you talk about the greatest fighter of all time, pound for pound, be honest, I mean, George St. Pierre doesn't really get mentioned. The names, I mean, he gets mentioned rarely compared to the names you always hear. Who do you always hear? Demetrious Johnson, John Jones, and Anderson Silva. And that's we're talking about greatest of all time. Today, yesteryear, the beginning. You hear John Jones, Demetrious Johnson, and Anderson Silva. Even more so than Conor McGregor, even more so than Daniel Cormier and George St. Pierre. So by George St. Pierre coming out and giving his nod to Demetrious Johnson, that kind of takes away from his arch rival, Anderson Silva, who some people still hold as the GOAT, which I do find interesting. I do find it interesting, man. There's some, I mean, Anderson Silva was my favorite fighter for a very long time, still one of my favorite fighters. He's what got me into mixed martial arts, and I always considered him the GOAT until I really became a hardcore fan and started doing the research and the knowledge and learning more and seeing him on his losing streak. And my personal opinion is I don't think Anderson Silva is the greatest fighter of all time, because he was getting smoked by Chael Sonnen, let's be real, in the first fight, until that triangle choke in the very 5th round. So we've seen Anderson Silva get bullied by wrestlers, you know. So like the Conor McGregor, when people knock Conor McGregor and say, oh well, he doesn't have the best wrestling, you know, so he's not the best overall fighter, you could say the same thing about Anderson Silva. Now Demetrious Johnson, he's got the wrestling, he's got everything, the striking, the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu. John Jones, striking, the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu. I mean, Anderson Silva, he's up there, but he should probably be more where George St. Pierre is. I don't know. My personal opinion is Anderson Silva is not, that's really not what this video is about, but I don't think Anderson Silva is the greatest fighter of all time. As far as pound for pound, overall skills, I mean, and that's coming from somebody that was a diehard Silva fan. It's the only person I really gave a fuck about when I started watching UFC. But, I mean, he's lost 4 fights in a row. He's popped dirty. I mean, you can say it's dick pills, but that's what John Jones said. And look what happened after his dick pill incident. He got popped for steroids after that. So it's looking like dick pills was just his, oh, I got caught once excuse for John Jones's case. Anderson Silva, he hasn't got caught again, but he hasn't really been winning either. His only win is came versus Derek Brunson, and that was controversial. So with that being said, man, it's interesting that George St. Pierre's coming out and co-signing Demetrious Johnson as the greatest fighter in the octagon right now. What I will say is if George St. Pierre is able to beat Michael Bisping at UFC 217 in Madison Square Garden and take Michael Bisping's title, he will be vaulted above Anderson Silva, above John Jones, because John Jones was dirty, into the top 3 pound-for-pound fighters of all time, because he will have moved up to 185 pounds and captured that belt. So if he doesn't defend his title at 185 pounds, people are still going to knock him and say, well, you didn't really beat a top contender at middleweight. You beat Michael Bisping. Some people knock Michael Bisping because he's one of the only champions that people clamoring to fight. Some people are going to say George St. Pierre didn't want to fight any middleweight except for Michael Bisping. He didn't want to fight Silva in his prime. He didn't go up to fight, Rockhold when he was the champion. He didn't fight Whitaker. He fought Michael Bisping. So who knows, man? This is definitely interesting, though. We'll have to keep up on that because we did that recently, a GOAT debate. Who's the fucking greatest pound-for-pound fighter of all time? So instead of doing another video, just let me know who thinks the GOAT in the comments. Is it Demetrious Johnson, as George St. Pierre is saying? Is it Anderson Silva, who some people still believe, but I don't? Is it John Jones, who's popped dirty twice now? Is it Daniel Cormier? Is it Conor McGregor? Somebody's going to come in that bitch and say, it's Fedor. It is what it is, man. Let the hitters know what the fuck you type at in the comments, dude. Why is there a wall around the cemetery? Because people are dying to get in.